Welcome on to episode number 43 of KC Grid Talk. My name is Emory, back again here on a Wednesday night. We had a double header this past weekend, two KC Grassroots Series in the Tri-C Karting Club at K1 Circuit, as well as the Texas Sprint Racing Series, starting off their calendar at Speed Sports. Unfortunately, normally this is where I or Caleb or Alex would introduce our two co-hosts, but the TSRS crew this past weekend had a bad bout with the flu. And so Alex is unfortunately still recovering. Caleb is still recovering. And so I was in California. I was able to avoid all the sickness. Very thankful for that. And certainly wishing both Caleb and Alex the best of luck in kind of recovering from their sickness. But means that's just me tonight on as a host. However, do have a fun episode still planned for you. It's been a long week for all of us, kind of getting back from California. And then on Caleb's end, recovering from a sickness, as well as for Alex, both in the chat here. Both of them, you know, they left me out to dry a little bit with their immune systems, but it's okay. We still got fun episode tonight. Of course, KC Grid Talk, as always, sponsored by DPK Americas and PitFit. So with that being said, I figured, why not? I need a little bit of help this week. Need someone else to join me. And so I figured we can't have KC Grid Talk without PitFit, and we can't have KC Grid Talk this week without Trey Shannon. Trey, you know, it's been a while since I've seen you. It's been a couple months since I've been in at PitFit, but I mean, how are you doing tonight, man?
Doing great. Thankfully, a little bit better than your co-hosts over there, and hope they both feel better soon.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. 104 fevers, sitting in bed, laying in bed for 2 days. Not the best way to spend the week after a race weekend, but they'll be back. Of course, the recovery and everything. But on your end, I mean, it's been a busy week or a busy year for you so far with a lot of traveling, a lot of clients doing well in races. I mean, sum up how you guys' efforts have been so far in 2025.
Yeah, it's the year's definitely gotten off to a pretty good start. We've been pretty busy with bumping up our track support program. So a few of us were at the Daytona Rolex 24 down to Daytona. Thankfully, the team we were working with won that in GTD Pro. So very excited for the Multimatic Ford Performance team. That was it was super cool to be a part of that and get to go up there with the guys at Victory Lane. And we had some drivers that ended up on the podium as well. So it was a cool weekend, and makes the 38-hour workday a little bit more worth it when you get a little bit of a champagne shower at the end.
Yeah, and I mean, you've been going to the 24 hours of Daytona for years. You've kind of been sort of around the paddock, but how special was it to kind of get sort of that win this year and kind of see the program that you guys have put together, the trackside support that has kind of come along over recent years, and kind of put that into fruition this year and kind of be a part of a victory as special as that?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I didn't really imagine that, when we started expanding our track sport program and trying to get more into that. And, we just were fortunate to get latched on with a really good team, and they put their trust in us to deliver a good service for them. And thankfully they've been really happy with working with us. And, we just kind of found ourselves, I guess, by dumb luck at that point, that we're with the winning team. But watching that program grow and working really hard to expand that and work with more teams up and down the IMSA paddock has been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of hard work, but to have it start paying off like that is definitely really rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you guys have worked quite a bit throughout the ladder of racing. I mean, you can name any number of PitFit clients all the way from IndyCar down to grassroots level karting. But, as you see sort of the progression of drivers that you've worked with in karting, I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel about kind of where your karting program is at into 2025 and some of the guys you've worked with over the course of the last year or so?
Man, I can't tell you how proud I am and how fun it is to watch these kids that, I call you guys all kids, but drivers that we worked with since they, some of them since they were 14, 15 years old, moving on from karting and going into other programs. And the obvious ones on the list for that would be like Weston Workman Tyler Wettengel, and guys like them, and to see them, up at the next levels and winning races there is super cool. I really it it's something I was hoping I could have a little bit of an impact on, a driver's career like that, but to see them continue to succeed is just it's awesome. It's more gratifying than I could have ever imagined, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, those were guys that like you said, that were 14 or 15 when they started working with you. You kind of saw the growth of them going from sort of, in some cases, like in Westbrook's case, like starting out on the club level to ending
Mm-hmm.
up where he is now. I mean, you know, what do you, as you look kind of at how you've sort of developed as a coach and kind of what you've seen over the course of the 8 years that you've been working with karting clients, I would say, I mean, where do you feel like the most, I guess, what gives you the most pride when you see kind of how they've developed?
To be honest, when I see them win the right way, when I see them race clean and fair, and they're not punting people out of the way to get W's, and when they're doing it the right way, and then when I see them just determined, when I see them pushing through adversity, and see them get knocked down, and the way they get back up, and that was something we always tried to really instill in all of them, all of you guys that we work with, that were that come to us at a younger age, and still a little bit more moldable than, let's say, some of the professionals that come our way. But yeah, just to see that kind of determination and resilience, that's probably the best part. And then, just seeing them be good people, outside the racetrack. I love when somebody's when somebody gets into grad school or something like that. I love seeing the off track wins with these guys.
100%. And I mean, I always think about the poster that you have with me and Westwork in the lobby there. I wasn't able to get it hung up behind me. That was supposed to be one of my background things, but
One of my
uh,
favorites. It's
yeah,
awesome.
if you look behind me, the wall space I have is not quite big enough. So that'll be certainly a fixture of my next destination, my next background. But
Maybe you can move that Porsche poster over just a little bit and get it up over next to that one.
I mean, that's another one that I've got from you. So we're making up half of my wall decorations here. But
I like it. I'm glad I could.
yeah,
I'm glad I could continue to contribute.
yeah, no, but I guess when you look at it from the outward sense, right? And I think that there's a lot of karting parents that maybe don't really recognize the value, the importance of fitness development in drivers. Where do you see that value coming in at such a young age for karting? Like, if you were to put yourself in the shoes of someone that's that maybe as a kid just starting out in karting in the junior levels or early
Mhm.
parts of senior levels, where do you think the value comes in when it comes to a program that you guys have?
Man, that's awesome question. I put it on work ethic, to be honest. Like, obviously there's performance things that we'll do, there's safety things that we'll do, and parents always appreciate everything on the safety side. But I think when you have a kid that's still coming up through, and a lot of these guys, maybe they don't play stick and ball sports, right? They're pretty focused on racing, and all of their coaches are very racing focused as well. So I think one of the things that we can provide to them and instill in them is that work ethic of things that you need to do away from the track, and even just away from racing. Maybe those small things that you don't necessarily want to do all the time, but they get to see how important that really is. So, it's going over data, it's doing your workouts, it's doing all of the little things that are going to add up and help you progress your career. Um, and that's something I think we've seen big growth with a couple of our younger drivers is, they may start with us because their parents are making them, you know, and then after 6 months or a year, or in some cases only, 6 days, they're excited to come to the gym. They love that part of it now. So I think helping them realize that there's a lot more to being a good driver than just being in the car, just being in the cart, there's a lot of other things that go into it. And to have that level of work ethic to keep bringing it every day, even if you don't really feel like it, that's where, one of the areas where we come in.
Yeah, and I mean certainly you kind of get the chance, I would say, to work with people that are all different stages of the development ladder, starting of course like from carts all the way up through the ladder. And you have guys that come in kind of with any range of packages too. I mean, you have guys that are in-house every day, could be like 9 a.m., 11 a.m., all through the day really. And then you also have the separate kind of remote package that people that go to college that are seniors at UNC or whatever may be on. So talk about kind of the internal side of like balancing that and sort of the advantages of being able to personalize the program for each driver and sort of each stage of their career.
Yeah, I mean, whenever we get somebody who comes into our program, we do a full assessment with them, so we know where they're starting. We know what their starting point is, and we evaluate what we call training age. So, somebody can be 25 years old but have never picked up a weight in their entire life, and they could be a professional driver already. On the flip side of that, you could have a 16-year-old, go-karter, a kid who just moved into late models or something like that, and they maybe played football in the first couple of years of high school, so they've got a couple of years of pretty quality training under their belt, working with a coach, that sort of thing. So when obviously we don't want to give those two people the exact same program, we want to be able to tailor it to what their training age is and what they need and what type of car they're going to be racing. So, we try to make sure we provide that level of flexibility and customization. We don't want to just give everybody the same workouts. It doesn't work that way. We're here for sports performance training, not CrossFit or Orange Theory or something like that. Not that there's anything wrong with those, but it's everybody isn't just getting the same cookie cutter workout with our program.
Death letters for everybody. No. Yeah. I think that should be the baseline level workout is
Yeah,
double death ladders.
we just had one. We just had one earlier this week. It was a
Yeah,
good effort. So yeah, Scott McLaughlin wanted to do one before he shoved off to St. Pete. So good little confidence booster for him.
absolutely. Nothing gets you mentally in the zone more than having to do a PitFit death ladder.
Yep, nothing.
Yeah, but I guess shifting focus a little bit more outwards towards karting as a whole. I mean, you've had a long life of experience when it comes to karting, and we'll get into some of that later, kind of in a second part of the show. But you've kind of been able to see through a number of drivers, a number of kind of drivers working on the national side, the local side of karting in the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, where do you feel like the sport is now, both from the driver's side as well as from kind of the overarching sports side?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the overarching sports side, I love how popular it's become and is continuing to get. I love the level of participation that's taking place. It seems like we have really healthy cart counts at a lot of these races. There's three pretty prominent national series in the U.S. right now, which is super impressive. That definitely wasn't the case back when I was still karting, but yeah, I think the participation level and just the general health of it seems to be really positive. Um, but I think also there are some directions that we've gone that maybe don't elicit the best racecraft, so to speak. And I know this is a dead horse that's being beaten once again within the karting community. But yeah, me and guys like myself and CDP and some of the other guys who are in their 30s, we're sitting around talking about how we loved racing with metal rear bumpers, and we weren't ever jumping over wheels and stuff like that. So um, you know, maybe it makes me seem old. Maybe it's just, yeah, from like the time of karting that I was in. But yeah, I would like to see better racecraft, and I don't have the answer for what that is, but it would be nice to see karters come out of karting with the better racecraft. Now, and I think there are the really top level guys. You see that, like when when Connor Zilic came out of karting, his racecraft was very good. It wasn't like he was part of the problem, but yeah, I think there's certain rules that we've made and pieces of bodywork that we've added that maybe make it a little more enticing as opposed to less to beat and bang and that sort of thing. But yeah, I would like to see just more of a culture of good racecraft as opposed to having to try to regulate it.
Yeah,
Wishful thinking, of course.
no, 100%. But is there a mentality difference you would say that you've noticed between kind of the younger drivers you've worked with and maybe some of the guys like a CDP that have, or like a Neil Verhagen that have kind of been through the karting ladder almost a decade ago at this point, and sort of how they view it versus how someone that's maybe 14 or 15 now sees karting and sees racecraft?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily the time that they raced, or just the nature of what it is now versus then. But guys like CDP, they raced out of, he was a privateer for most of his karting career. I always was. I never ran with. I mean, I did one race with Mike Doty back in like 2008, and I thought I was big time for that. That was my big. I'm racing with a big team finally. But yeah, I think the prevalence of running with a team now versus running as a privateer probably feeds into that a little bit more. Very few or fewer people now are showing up with their own cart that they would have to fix if they wrecked it, that they would have to worry about if something happened, versus running with one of these big teams and a chassis gets bent and they roll another one out for you, ready to go, and dad writes a check and you're back on track. So it's tough to say if that's really what feeds into it, or if it is the racing in the 90s and 2000s versus racing in the 20 teens and 2020s. But it's probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, and as we get the next 5 years down the line, so to speak, is there anything? I know you mentioned it's tough where there's no real solution to it, but is there something you would like to see, some like tangible solution that Trey Shannon wants to make for everyone in karting that you think would make the product better?
Yeah, I think if everybody was on a PitFit training program, that would definitely do it. Yeah, that would take care of all the issues.
Make them do snap tech enough times, and
Yeah,
it'll drill logic in their head.
exactly. Yeah, for USPKS, for SCUSA, for stars, it's just mandatory PitFit program if you want to enter.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think though, speaking on a personal side, the cognitive side of things, even if sometimes I still have the irrational thoughts, irrational racecraft, the cognitive drills that you guys do, and I think this is something that maybe a lot of people don't really recognize from an outward sense, can really help when it comes to sort of slowing down the environment around a racer, but not in the sense of like them slowing down their decision making, but it kind of helps regulate the thought process. I think that's something that certainly you guys have done a good job of kind of like helping with any level of racing, and is one of the first things I would say you notice when you go into a PitFit program. But I think it's something that maybe if you could expand on that in terms of how you guys help in that sense, because I think it feeds into drivers making the right decisions, drivers not putting themselves in bad positions, and drivers kind of overcoming the urge to, let's just say crash out in modern terms.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you nailed it with the phrase "slow down the environment." So, like you said, we're not slowing down the decision making; we're actually speeding that up. But we're doing it by making it seem like everything else is happening in slow motion. So, essentially, if we can increase the brain's processing speed, then everything else that's happening around you feels like it's happening more slowly. So then your decisions that you feel like you're making at a normal rate, you're actually making those faster because obviously the environment around you hasn't slowed down. You're just processing more quickly. So uh, yeah, our whole goal is to increase that brain processing speed and then build skills around that, whether it's your peripheral vision, whether it's being able to shift your gaze from near to far and far back to near, something like that. Um, Eye hand coordination. There's a lot of different elements that go into it, but at the basis of it is we want the brain to work faster. That's pretty much what it all boils down to, and that's one of the areas that I mentioned earlier with safety. Um, we can make the body more resilient by doing strength training. We can add bone density, add muscle mass. That's all well and good, very helpful. But what really keeps drivers even safer is being able to make better, quicker decisions on track, avoiding accidents, maybe not putting yourself in a spot where an accident could occur, that sort of thing. Being able to evaluate more of what's going on around you than you could previously, and being able to just put your car in a better spot for when something ahead of you does happen, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think the safety value of the cognitive training is huge.
Yeah, and doing it under, I guess, intense load as well. Like a lot of times with the circuits you guys do, and or at a minimum, kind of integrating in cognitive training right after a hard workout or right after a workout, kind of
Mm-hmm.
stimulates,
Yeah,
I guess, the on-track environment, the on-track heart rate
yeah,
raising and stuff like that.
absolutely. Yeah, we'll make and we do a number of different things with when we put those into a workout. So like you just said, we'll do it after cardio or intermixed with the workout where heart rate's elevated. And, for some people that makes the cognitive drills easier. For some people, it makes the cognitive drills more difficult. Sometimes it's easier up until a certain fatigue level, and then it gets more difficult. So we actually try to find where that is for each person and fatigue them to the point where it is adding additional cognitive load just to do the same drill that they maybe could have done a little bit more easily fresh. With our sports car drivers, we'll actually have them come in when they walk in the door before they even do their warm up. Sometimes we'll throw them on the sensory station, have them do some cognitive drills because you never know when they're going to need to get into the car under a green flag condition, and they better not lose a spot when they're coming out of the pits. They better not lose a second to whoever they need to go chase or to whoever's chasing them. They need to be on it immediately. So we want to work on getting that brain switched on from cold to active and make that time as short as possible. And then for a lot of these guys too, we'll put them in the sauna, and after their workout, they're taking a phone or an iPad or something into the sauna with them, and they're doing some cognitive drills in there too.
Yeah, certainly. I think doing the cognitive drills in the sauna as a whole, like, is it's a different kind of intensity, I would say, but certainly, I mean, I feel like anything that you do with a cognitive workout or like with a cognitive drill within a workout has some level of kind of complexity to it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's special. But I guess before we wrap up this side of the segment, I want to hear, what do you feel like the biggest misconception that people have about fitness and racing, and particularly fitness and karting, is?
Man, that's a loaded question right there. That's huge. I think obviously the biggest misconception is that drivers aren't athletes, right? That's the kind of the big argument. I think for at least recently, most people have kind of come around to recognize drivers as athletes. But what I don't think most people realize uh, is the amount of load a driver is under when they're in the car or in the cart. People don't realize how fast things really do happen. They see it on TV, and it looks like people are driving cars. And TV really just doesn't do the speed of racing justice, and like you've been to plenty of races, you've seen plenty of races on TV, and it looks fast on TV, but then you go to the race and it looks even faster. And
100%.
then, I think even from watching on the sidelines, then if you went and tried it yourself, now it's even faster. So a lot of people don't realize how fast things really do happen, and how quickly a brain needs to process all of those things, and how much a brain needs to process to be successful, actually just to get around the track, let alone be successful in racing in a pack with other people. So I think the cognitive load of what a driver is under is very underestimated. There's a huge misconception about how difficult it is to drive a race car, both physically and cognitively. I mean, the race car is an extremely violent environment. Most people would be, I think most people would be thrown off. I mean, literally, their brain processing would be thrown off just by how loud a race car is, let alone how much it's vibrating, or the fact that it's 160 degrees inside if you're in a closed cockpit. How little you can really see when you have a helmet on. How little you can actually move when you have all of your gear on. How hot that fireproof suit is. How hot it is sitting on a grid in a go-kart in the
Yeah,
summer. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. And the go-kart itself, I think what a lot of people don't realize is that if we don't wear rib vests in a go-kart, we're cracking a rib.
it's a killer.
And I don't think the normal person can really fathom that until they actually see it and feel it. So yeah, I think the biggest misconception is just how difficult driving a go-kart or a race car really is.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100%. I mean, first off, the racing drivers aren't athletes. Feels like it's been something we've been fighting forever. In recent years, with the rise of F1, I feel like at least a lot more of the casuals, so to speak, have kind of come around at least somewhat on that idea.
Yeah.
But there's still, I guess, like a discrepancy between what people see the difficulties of racing, the difficulties between kind of the racing environment, and then what actual difficulties the racing driver face are. And I think the cognitive load and the amount of, I guess, environment challenges that take place regardless of how fast you can kind of drive a car is something that I think gets overlooked by a lot of people, because ultimately, like you mentioned, you're basically racing in a pressure cooker within a closed cockpit car. You're extremely tight confines in basically a rocket ship in an open cockpit car.
Yeah.
In a cart, you're basically out there baking in an environment with with an egregious amount of power to weight ratio, and in some cases, an insane amount of load on the body. I mean, to me, you hit it right on the head. The amount of complexities that go into to racing, and kind of the amount of different things that PitFit has to account for when it comes to training a driver. It's certainly, I think, something that a lot of people don't quite have the appreciation that they should have.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes about driving a race car that I've ever heard comes from, you may not remember this guy. His name is Parker Johnstone. He ran a lot of Trans Am and sports cars, and then had his couple years in IndyCar and Champ Car back in the 90s, around the mid 90s, and then he became a broadcaster. And during one of the races, he said, I want to make sure I get this right because it's really good. He said driving, and he was referring to driving an Indy car, but he said driving a race car is like doing differential calculus on a Stairmaster in a sauna. And if you make a mistake, somebody smacks you in the head with a brick and takes $20,000 out of your pocket. And I thought that was just so accurate. I was like, that's
elite quote.
That's 100% true. I mean, that sums it up.
That is, man, I got to use that one.
So that's what I train people for. I train people for doing differential calculus on a Stairmaster in a sauna.
Trey has taught me to do DiffEQ once, like 3 years ago.
I had to dig deep for that one, but we got there.
Yeah. So Anyways, so obviously very thankful for PitFit and all that they've done, both for me, for a lot of drivers in the karting community, and everything else. But beyond that, I have Trey on. There's a part of this that is the PitFit story because PitFit obviously has been huge for our show, has been huge for me, has been huge for the industry, and I wanted to give a lot of time shine on you guys. There's also the Trey Shannon story because that in itself has a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting tidbits. But before we do that, we'll have a word from our sponsors, including PitFit.
Are you looking to take the next step in your racing journey? Well, look no further than PitFit.
With 2 locations in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Indianapolis, Indiana, PitFit trains drivers all the way from grassroots level karting to IndyCar and NASCAR, with top-of-the-line personalized coaching to improve physical and cognitive fitness.
For more information on programs, check out PitFit on Instagram or Facebook today. DPK Americas is bridging the gap between the U.S. and the 2-time world champion DPK Alonso Kart factory team in Europe.
In partnership with Team Binnick, they offer drivers a complete career path from the Americas to Europe that allows them to continue their driver development on both sides of the world, all underneath the DPK umbrella.
For more information, contact DPK Americas at max@drivensm.com to take the next step in your driver development journey today.
Join us for the biggest kart racing convention of the year, the 39th OVKA Kart Racing Trade Show and Swap Meet, Saturday, February 1st, Roberts Center, Wilmington, Ohio. Whether you're into sprint karting, dirt and oval racing, road racing, unlimiteds, or vintage karting, there are deals here for you. Shop our 60,000 square foot show floor, filled with the karts, parts, and supplies you need. Network with kart racers of all disciplines from across the country. Get insights from experts at our performance seminars. Visit our Intro to Kart Racing open house to get started in racing. Visit OVKA.com. Vendor registration is now open. OVKA.com.
Well, 2 things to clear up there on the advertising side. First off, the OVK swap meet has already happened. That was on February 1st. And unless we have a time machine here, I don't think that we can go back to it. But OVK swap meet is one of the coolest annual traditions in American karting, a great sign for the grassroots side of things, and certainly kind of an opportunity for the Midwest community in karting to come together and have a lot of opportunities. And again, also on the grassroots side, we've been really working hard this year to continue sort of spreading our influence on that. We were at Tri-C this past weekend. We're at TSRS this past weekend. Just announced we'll be going to Pro Kart Challenge at K1 Circuit this weekend as well. I'll be there behind the scenes working in production again. So really nice facility, really nice track that we'll be at again on the grassroots side. And the second thing, Trey, I have to say I appreciate you guys for getting us the B-roll for that clip, because it takes that ad from a solid 6 out of 10, with me, Alex, and Caleb talking, to 10 on that one. Get to see more Trey, get to see more of other Trey.
Yep.
Get to see quite a few of the faces that I know in there. So
we call him Young
definitely-
Trey.
Yeah. Not Trey Young, Young Trey.
Nope, Young Trey. Yeah.
Young
Big
Trey.
difference.
No, but
Yeah, that was a video courtesy of Tyson Gifford. Shout out to him, man. He does great work. I was gonna say the opposite. I feel like the voiceover there definitely elevated it. So Xander asked me what I wanted you guys to say, and I was like, dude, Emory already said it, man. We're good.
I have to say, as much as I enjoy script writing, as much as I enjoy going off a script, it's way more fun when I was doing the ad reads off the rip.
Yeah,
So,
just wing it, man.
no,
Just go for it.
just straight winging it. But you've had a lot of different roles in your kind of racing tenure, so to speak. You've got the current role at PitFit, which I think is what a lot of people know you for. You've got, I believe, I want to say the only person we've had on this show or on any kart chaser show to both actively hold and have held a Guinness World Record. And along those lines, you've run 24-hour races, which as good as Ryan Norberg or Caden McQueen or Danny Formal or CDP, we were talking pre-show about all the accolades CDP has had. I don't think any of them have Ironman a 24-hour race before, and I don't want to don't want to put myself in a bind on that one, so I won't say it like as a factual statement. But man, I mean, not just once, not just twice, not just 3 times. What was it? 4? It's at least 4, no?
It's lucky number 7. Yeah.
7.
Done 7 24-hour. Well, if you combine races and record attempts and all that stuff, I've Ironman 24 hours 7 times. Yeah.
Wow. So, what got you into that?
Man, it's I don't even know, to be honest. I started karting back in 2000, and had some, mild success doing pavement oval karting in North Carolina. Ran at Orange County Raceway, Concord, RIP, both of those places. But won a couple races here and there, and ran, in the top 5 in local points and that sort of thing. But, didn't have a lot of success at national level. And, then I went to school and just took some time off from racing to go through school. And I was working as an engineer on another team at that point. So, was kind of focusing, my energies on school and on being an engineer for Allison Legacy Car. And, then after school, I ended up working for AIM for, you guys all know him as Micron. So spent a couple of years working for Micron and got back into, or sort of got into sprint karting as a result of that, into the 2-stroke stuff, which I think was where I kind of always wanted to try to race. Oval karting just was a lot more accessible in the 2000s in North Carolina. This was long before Trackhouse existed, before Carolina Motorsports Park had a kart track. Oval karting was where it was, and the pavement scene was still really strong. It's pretty much non-existent now. It's all, everything on oval is dirt, but pavement oval was huge back then. So that was what I did, just because I could start right away, and had a lot of fun with it. But kind of always wanted to do the 2-stroke stuff. So when I got the chance to actually give it a shot, did some races there, and again, just I can hold my own, I think, in a go-kart, but I'm not going to go win any. Was never going to go win any big national races or anything like that. So I knew that my future was in what my chosen profession at the time was, engineering, and not in driving. So to me, just driving became something I did for fun. And at that point, it was still really difficult to do it regularly. So I kind of had this idea of well, what if I do an entire season of racing just all in one day? And I think there was an article in eKarting News about some guy who this is back in probably 2009, something like that, 09 to 2010, somewhere in there. And eKarting News put out an article about some dude in the UK who did 24 hours solo and broke the world record. And I was like, oh, it looks pretty cool. And, I'm 20, 25 at the time, something like that. I'm young, love fitness, love racing. I was like, oh, I could probably do that. And at the very bottom of the article, sure enough, David Cole had put a survey. Do you think you could do it? Yes or no? And I answered yes. And I get a text from DC that just says, prove it. So I was like, all right, man, you're on. So I got everything together to, I worked on that for, probably a year and a half, before I could even get onto the track over there at Newcastle to try it. So the first one was a big success. And I was like, well, maybe we can do one indoor as well, because those should be different records. And sure enough, they were. So went and did one for indoor, and then somebody broke it. So I was like, well, I'll go back and do it again. So I did it again. And then after those were done, I just kind of came across the 24 Hours of America event. Didn't even know it existed. And then kind of came across it and reached out to the organizers there and said, hey, can I do this solo? And they said, yeah, sure. Sounds good. Like, if you can pay your entry fee, then you can do whatever you want. So did that at Charlotte Motor Speedway, which was super cool. It was before they repaved it. So that one was pretty brutal. That was a tough one. But it gained a little bit of traction. And the next year they had a solo class for us, and I got to race against 2 other solo guys. And we did that for a couple of years. So it just kind of kept sort of growing on itself and turning into something new after that. And then the big like cherry on top was out in the UK in Milton Keynes. There's a kart track out there that does a 24-hour race every year, and it's a decently big deal in like the rental karting arena out there. And a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go race it solo, and he was willing to pay for me to do it. So I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I asked the organizers there if I could race like just as a like a normal entry. So when we did the 24 Hours of America here, our fuel stops had to be longer, just to separate us from the rest of the pack. So we're only racing with the solos. But they let me race there just as a regular kart. So there was no delineation between me and the rest of the other 25 karts, or the other 24 karts that were in my class. So that was a really cool challenge to me. I wanted to see if I could, sprint the whole 24 hours and not take any extended rests, at least no more than what everybody else was going to be doing, and see where I ended up. And that was a really cool experience. It went super well. I was absolutely torched at the end of it, and haven't had the desire to do it again since.
Yeah, well, you kind of answered my next question there. I was like, when are we going to see Trey try another 24-hour race?
Highly unlikely.
Unfortunate, man.
Highly unlikely. Yeah.
But no, so that was at Daytona, no? In,
the one in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was there's a few Daytona tracks out there, but yeah, it was Daytona, Milton Keynes.
24 hours at Daytona.
So I've done 24 hours at Daytona here as well.
Crazy.
That was the first 24 Hours of America where we had a solo class, was at the kart track at Daytona. And we did a slightly different layout. So instead of, when you come around, turn 5 and head towards the far end, instead of doing a 180 and going through that little horseshoe section, we just went straight onto the back straightaway. So it was a lot of fun. That corner was just like a small lift and then back down and huge sweeper, which was awesome. And then instead of running the final corner that National normally runs, we did the little chicane that was right before it. So slightly different layout, but yeah, ran 24 hours there.
Yeah. What engine package was that one on?
That was a 4-stroke.
I see.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, you've done, if I remember correctly, the first one you did was on a Rotax package, no?
Yeah. This was pre X30. This was back in 2011.
Yeah. And we've talked about this before. It was your first time driving in the rain in that race.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. I mean,
I had because in oval karting you don't race in the rain. So I had never driven a kart in the rain before. And I got to figure it out at, I think it was around like 1:32 in the morning. And that would have put me like 16 hours in at that point. So I had been driving for 16 hours. And if I'm sure everybody who's listening or watching to this knows that Newcastle doesn't have lights. So we had put up like 6 contractor lights. So the, like the little tow behind diesel generator lights that go up on the highway. We had 6 of those, which over a 1 mile circuit is not very many. So I had a little like motorcycle headlight on the front of the cart with its own battery. And I had a little just like light switch on the front on the driver fairing. Super cool, super tricked out. I loved it. Shout out on that one to Jim Conlon, Adrenaline Fix Karting. They got me. They supported that whole effort, and they did a awesome job. They rigged up a like chain lube system for me to lube the chain mid stint, and a headlight for me to make it through the night. But yeah, it was, like I said, 16 hours in, good and tired by that point. Had never driven a kart in the rain, and it started raining. But thankfully I came up to test earlier in the summer, and the Pan Am series was racing right before I tested, and they were racing in the rain. So I was there watching, and I made sure to pay very close attention to the technique as much as I could, just in case that happened. So thankfully, when it came time for me to actually race in the rain, I was on the fast track at Newcastle, and within like 4 or 5 laps, I was, down to like a couple seconds off a normal rain race pace, which was all we really needed to do. I didn't need to push it any harder than that, but I was happy with how that part went.
Very impressive. I mean, I think it was a couple weeks ago we talked to Justin White about kind of his first shifter race being or his first rain race in a shifter coming like in the final at Pittsburgh, and how difficult that was. But you add in the fatigue of driving Rotax for 16 hours under the lights, but the lights aren't really that useful.
Oh, they were terrible.
Yeah. I mean, was there ever a point where you were like, "Oh no, I'm gonna bend this"? Like,
no, actually, I mean, it was definitely probably one of the most like mentally taxing things I've ever done. But yeah, I had one of my biggest fears come true earlier in that event, which, me, big irrational fear of bees. And I got stung by a yellow jacket in the left leg going into I-70. So I had already,
oh my God.
It made me like lock up, and I spun backwards and went off at I-70, and, had to push the cart back on and get it going again. When I came back in, they said, "What happened?" And I was like, "I got stung by a yellow jacket."
That's absolutely wild. I mean, I've driven karts now at this point for 12 years. I've never been stung by a bee.
Yeah.
I've heard
I mean, it just surprised me. It was just on my left leg, like on my thigh. And I even saw it. Like, I looked down, I saw it, and I was like, "Oh, come on, this can't be happening." And then as soon as I start cresting that little bridge right before you hit the brake zone for I-70, it got me, and I put my left foot down hard on accident and just spun it off.
So what I'm hearing on this is we needed the Justin Haley kit for bee removal.
Yeah.
On your cart, we needed the WD-40 and the fly swatter.
Mm-hmm.
That's
100%.
Should have known, man. Should have known.
If I had, I'd have had him there, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, but you talked about working for Micron and AIM back in the late 2000s into 2010 or so.
Yeah, it was. I was there in 2007 and 2008. Yeah, right after I graduated from school.
Yeah, so that was kind of a transition, like you mentioned, back into the karting paddock, and then you worked as an engineer for a good amount of time, post Virginia Tech, post kind of studying and whatnot. You get into like a mechanical engineering being your full-time job. What led to you kind of going back to the fitness side of things, or I guess going to the fitness side of things, and what was kind of the motivation behind that?
Yeah, I mean, we literally just talked about it. It was that event. It was doing that record attempt. So I to get ready for it, I'd always been in shape, but I wanted to train specifically for this for, a year or so leading up to it. And that was what I did. I was able to get hooked up with a trainer. I was living in Maryland at the time, and got to work a couple times a week with somebody there, and he was giving me programs to follow. And then I reached out to PitFit to see if they would be interested in helping. So, Jim Leo, he's the founder of PitFit and obviously my business partner now, but he was running the show back then, and I reached out to him and asked if there was anything they could do to help. And he was into it. He had me come by their Indy facility. This is when they were in the old facility up there, and do some workouts, do some cognitive training with them before I went and did my test. And then Jim actually was pretty much my physio for the event. So in that whole process of training and going to PitFit, working with Jim, working with my coach back in Maryland, I got this I fell in love with it. I thought it was super cool. And I also got this thought like, man, this is something that I think I could be really good at. I think this has enough of my interest and combines multiple passions of mine. I know it's something I would be super dedicated to, and just kind of analyzing the process and the science that was going into it, it really intrigued me, and it was something that I wanted to at least explore. So after the record attempt, I looked at like what kind of credentials do I need to get? What kind of certifications do I need to get? I looked at that, studied for, I would say it was probably about 2 years I spent studying, just getting up early and studying for an hour or two before I started work. Thankfully, at that time, I was working from home, which was kind of unique at the time. Like, it was 2012. Nobody was really working from home in 2012, but thankfully I was able to. So it gave me a little bit of additional freedom to study in my off time, and got my certification. And we moved here to Charlotte, and I did both jobs for a while, as you saw, where I had guys showing up to Mountain Island Fitness to do some training, and I'd pop out of the front office where I was doing my engineering job, come out, train somebody for an hour or so, go back into doing my engineering job.
How difficult was it to manage the two of those at the same time?
It wasn't too bad. I think I had such a, you get, the energy you get when something's new, that additional, just, it's almost like a shot of adrenaline. I could stay at the gym until 8:30 training people in the evening, and I had that energy for it because it was very new. And thankfully at the time, the projects I was working on with my engineering job, I had been working on them for quite a while. So it wasn't, it was somewhat second nature. I could manage that relatively easily. And they gave me a lot of freedom. That company that I was working for, they didn't really, I didn't have to sit there and like move the mouse every 15 minutes. So they knew I was sitting at my computer. It was very much, results based and deadline based setup. So as long as I was doing all of the work that I was supposed to be doing, they didn't really care when or where I did it. So it made it really made the transition relatively smooth for me to be able to manage doing both of those at the same time.
Yeah, and so initially you had Trey Shannon Fitness, was kind of the OG brand. You started working, I would say, like, what was it? 2015 was kind of the first couple clients you had with Colin and.
Yeah, it started in 2014 with Tom Long.
Tom Long, that's right. Yeah. So Tom was the first one.
Tom's the OG. Yeah, started with Tom Long, and then he got me connected with Tyler Cook, and then some of my other guys right after that. They joked that Tyler Cook should be on a commission because he brought me quite a few. But yeah, I started working with Colin soon after that, and it was just whatever we could do. Like I was training Tom at a rec center. I was training Tyler at Mountain Island Fitness. I was going to Colin's house to train him and John Edwards, and it was just sort of, I was all over the place. And thankfully I have a very understanding and supportive wife that was all about it, and she's like, yeah, you do what you need to do. And she wanted to see it succeed just as much as I did. So it was it made the running around and managing multiple engagements relatively not easy, but a little bit more straightforward, much easier than they could have been, for sure. But yeah, it all started with Tom Long. I always think it's weird that I moved here to Charlotte thinking, oh, I'll basically be like the NASCAR version of PitFit. And when I started Trey Shannon Fitness, and like my first 5 clients were sports car drivers and go-karters.
Yeah, I was gonna say eventually you kind of got into the NASCAR market around the time that I ended up kind of starting.
Yeah, it was right around then.
Yeah, early part of 2017. But at some point, you kind of made the big decision. You sort of committed to this full time. You went to the Podium Performance Fitness brands.
Mm-hmm.
You eventually got your own space. I mean, walk me through those steps and kind of, I guess you had already kind of committed, I would say, in some sense, to kind of flipping your life into this in some sense, but kind of what led you to go down the full path as you ended up going?
Yeah. Like you said, that was always the plan. Once we got to Charlotte and I started doing this, it was always with an eye towards leaving engineering and doing this full time. I was getting pretty close to being able to do that in early 2017. I was like, okay, this is probably the year. Like, this is when this is when we're going to make the move. And then it actually, the ultimate catalyst for it, though, was something with the engineering job. The company I was working for, they got a contract with Catawba Nuke, which is a power station here in the Charlotte area. And my boss said, we want you to be the on-site person there. And that was when I said, all right, cool, I quit. Because I knew that if I had to be on site, at a power station, I couldn't be at the gym training anybody. So it was decision time, and I didn't quit right then and there. But within like that month, I handed in my resignation and went full time to this. So it was right around October. It was like October of 2017. And my first day of being fully self-employed, I drove down to Road Atlanta for Petite Le Mans. So it was pretty sweet timing. It wasn't bad.
Absolutely. And then everything else kind of writes itself in a sense. For a while there, after you kind of went full time, you were still working out of Mountain Islands.
Mm-hmm.
How big was it to get that first property that was kind of your own, in the sense of like being able to work out of the current facility that you have in Cornelius?
Yeah, man, that was huge. That was something that I never really envisioned being, a business owner, having a space that I went out and found and built up the way I wanted it. I never envisioned that when I was in school or working as an engineer or whatever. Like it was something that just, almost caught me by surprise that was the route that I wanted to go down, but it really was. And I had a huge passion for it. So being able to open up in Cornelius, I searched for that place for like a year because I wanted to make sure it was in a good space and in a good location on the map, a good spot for everybody to get to. I know it made your drive a little bit longer.
Yeah, whatever.
I still feel bad about that, but
hey, I would have never gotten introduced to One Loco though. So
oh yeah. You
priorities.
can't sleep on One Loco for sure. Yeah, 100%. That's we can all thank CDP for that one.
Absolutely.
I recommend something. You go and eat it. Take it to the bank.
Yeah. I will say, to be specific, Derek was on me for probably a solid like month about going to One Loco. So
Yeah. Well, CDP told him and me about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But,
they both get credit in my book. But
yeah, it's a good spot to be in. And it was where, it was right up along the lake and along 77. And I thought I knew location was going to be important. So I was trying to be patient and find the right spot. And at the time, PitFit wanted to be in Charlotte as well. So in my mind, I was kind of racing against PitFit. I was trying to beat PitFit to the punch, which I ultimately managed to do. And I don't know if that was all just a ploy from Jim to get me to go ahead and do all the hard work and then approach me later with a partnership. And if it was, man, well played. Like, but yeah, about a year after I opened up in Cornelius under Podium Performance Fitness, Jim gave me a ring and wanted to explore a partnership, and I told him I was all for it, and let's talk, and here we are. So it was something that I never at any point shied away from. PitFit's always been the absolute gold standard in motorsport human performance. So for me to be in a position where I had my own space and my own business and my own project in that realm, for him to reach out and want to work together was huge. I mean, it was I was tickled to death.
absolutely. And it's interesting because from my lens, right, like this all kind of happened around the time where I went off to college, and I leave in early part of 2021, or I guess summer of 2021. We have the blue and kind of, or was it kind of like turquoise and green branding of Podium.
Yeah, it was like a teal and green.
Yeah. I come back, giant PitFit on the wall.
Everything's orange.
Yeah. Every time I came back for like a year straight, it was like more orange. And then for a solid like year and a half, the like free weights were still like Podium branded.
Yeah.
And it was like that was the last bit that was like still yet to change.
Last year I finally got those switched over.
Yeah. So no, I mean it's awesome to hear kind of the 8-year, well, I guess it's kind of like a 7 to 8 year journey of like going from the origins of moving to Charlotte to kind of talking to Jim about PitFit.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it's turned into a 13-year journey. You're kind of at, I don't want to say a peak because that implies that there's not better things in the future, but you've certainly continuously developed the brand, continuously developed kind of the location in Cornelius, the partnership you guys have. And I mean, you look forward to the next few years. I mean, what do you see is next, kind of the next steps for PitFit? I'm going to stay focused, I would say, on your side, but also kind of looking at the brand as a whole.
Yeah. It could go in any number of directions, to be honest. We definitely want to continue to expand our track support. That's been a big project for us over the last couple of years. And for the IMSA endurance season this year, we'll be working with three different manufacturer teams in the IMSA paddock. So that's a big move for us, and a really good improvement from where we've been. So we want to continue to build that and kind of build our network of physios around the country and be able to, kind of be, our goal is to be the go-to in that realm, just like we are on the fitness, the in-house fitness side. And then, from there we can, we want to continue building our facilities and looking at the different avenues that we have for that, whether it be, introducing driver camps or, maybe expanding a little bit with, we've done some projects with indoor karting facilities where, we do essentially like a karting. It's like you do a workout and you do some karting. And that's been a big hit up in Indianapolis, and we're looking at maybe doing that down here and possibly even some other places around the country. And there's a few other things that we have sort of in lying in wait for when the time is right, and I'll hang on to those until we decide to really go for it with them. But we definitely have a few things that that are still in the planning phases and could be pretty big game changers for us going forward.
It's like the papaya army blocking the McLaren today. Gotta
Exactly.
gotta make sure the photographers can't get in and see
It's in the job
flow
description,
pattern.
man. Yeah, that's one of the required job skills.
Except instead of having a whole team, you have Trey Shannon on a podcast.
It's just me and how tight-lipped I can be.
Real. No, but I mean, you look back on this journey on the few years. What's one of your favorite moments that you can think of from working with drivers, working in either location over the course of the last 10 years that you've had?
Man, looking back, the Christmas relays are always a great time. And just seeing kind of the camaraderie that can be built there, and just what's come of like the culture that I've been trying to build inside the facility. Those are always a lot of fun. One of my favorites was definitely a certain go-karter getting a penalty for being too aggressive on the last lap and trying to make a move into turn 3 at GoPro. You laugh, man, but I that was a big accomplishment for me as a coach to know that I got through to you and we made a change, in just the way you attacked on the last lap. I was so excited that you were aggressive enough to get a penalty for that. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it.
Yeah. That's a rare one, by the way, to hear. So some backstory on this, I guess, is kind of needed. When I first came to Trey, like when I was 14, I was racing in junior. I had this tendency of I would always end up second, third, fourth because it wasn't aggressive enough. And between you and my dad, the two of you guys, I think over the course of a year or two, consistently drilled into my head, like, be more aggressive, like, take more chances.
Yeah.
And then eventually you guys were like, just get a penalty, man. Like, I think the first penalty I got that I earned, which I think was that one, you guys were both like proud of me for getting
we're
it.
high-fiving each other, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I made you do in the gym to help you with that?
Oh man.
Because I definitely do. So I noticed that you had a tendency to kind of like size things up.
Oh,
right.
Where you would throw in like random things.
And well, and whenever we would do an exercise, let's say we were doing like a dumbbell bench press, right? Something simple, you would kind of circle the bench a couple of times and then sit down, do the exercise. So I remember I was like, hey man, no more circling, no more sizing up. When we're doing an exercise, you're just going to sit down, you're going to do it. No thinking about it. And just trying to get you to be more like instinctual as opposed to overthinking everything. That was my goal, at least. So when it wasn't the penalty per se that I was so excited about. It was the fact that somebody had passed you into turn 1 and you immediately tried to pass them back into turn 3.
Yeah.
And instead of trying to size them up for the rest of the lap and overthink the move, you just went straight back for it. And to me, I mean, it's still to this day, in my mind, one of my biggest coaching wins.
Yeah.
I thought, holy crap, this kid listened to me. This is awesome.
Well, and again, though, I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about a while ago in terms of like, there's so much more to like driver psychology, driver development than just meets the eye. And I think like that's one of the things that I can attest to on the program side of things is there's a physical side, which for me has been a lot of help over the years for a variety of different reasons. There's been the cognitive side that I think has helped a lot. And certainly, I mean, I won't lie, like in back and a lot of the other like stuff I take a lot of pride in and enjoy. But I think like half the battle is just being able to kind of personally understand kind of what you need as a driver and kind of have the tools provided to you. And it sometimes it's as simple as like just telling me like, man, do it. Don't don't think.
Yeah, need to just make you wear Nike every day so you can see it in the mirror. Just do it.
Real. No, but that's a good one. I always think of the relay races too because I think
Yeah.
we're three. I missed this year's one unfortunately, but before that we were 3 for 3. I feel like on each year something really funny happening.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
There was one year where you were definitely the source of it.
It was legal, man.
Big end back shenanigans.
It was legal.
That's true. I didn't say you couldn't do it, so it's all good. Yeah. But yeah, the relays were definitely big. You know, they're very memorable in my mind. You know, even going back to some of the earlier ones. You know, like you and T-Dub and Westwork and Logan all racing against each other on the ski and that sort of thing. You know, and honestly, I think there's a lot of moments outside the gym that definitely, you know, leave an impact. Like definitely get to live in my memory. And you know, that's, you know, guys like you graduating from high school and now college, and you know, I've been to a couple of guys' weddings, and you know, seeing Dane Cameron win the Rolex 24 after trying for 15 years and knowing how much that meant to him. You know, stuff like that is much bigger than, you know, anything that, you know, that happens in the facility outside of, you know, relays, of course.
And Justin Haley going after V's.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's my answer for this.
Yep. Swatter in one hand, brake cleaner in the other. Let's get them.
Yeah. That and the ping pong too. You know, I've been away from the ping pong game for a while now, but
it's heating up. It's getting hot. We've somehow managed to turn Mason Walters into a ping pong fanatic. And he's like sitting at home watching YouTube videos on how to be better at ping pong. So it becomes an addiction fast.
Is he winning against you guys?
He's playing some pretty solid Pong these days.
High level ping pong player.
Yeah, he's getting there. He's definitely getting there.
I couldn't hang 2 years ago with that iteration of ping pong. I fear I might be washed completely out of the ballpark at this point. But yeah, before we wrap this up, Trey, I mean, I feel like we've gone through a lot in terms of the branding side of things, but as always, we like to give our guests, we like to give whoever comes on the show the open platform at the end to promote whatever they need to, whether it be PitFit, whether it be yourself, whether it be F1 testing takes, social media ideas, whatever. So I give the floor to you to kind of close out this awesome segment here.
Oh man, I don't know if anybody really is gonna want to listen to anything I got to say, but honestly, I appreciate what Kart Chaser has been doing for us recently, and I've been just insanely impressed with the level of, you know, production that you guys put out every week. This is not something I could have ever even imagined having access to, you know, back when I was karting. And for you guys to be able to do this for the community now, I think is really important. I mean, it's impressive, but it's also, I think, really valuable and really important to the, you know, to the state of karting and the future of karting. And this is a sport that I love so much. You know, motorsport obviously, but karting specifically, I absolutely love karting. Isn't a single thing on this planet that's more fun than being behind the wheel of a go-kart. And to see what you guys are doing for the sport and to see where the sport's going and the popularity that it has is just, it's awesome. And I'm really excited to see what the next 5-10 years has in store and what you guys have in store for the next, 5-10 years and where this can go. And, maybe we see karting on network television here in the future. It's just, it might sound crazy, but you never know when something like that could happen. Maybe on the Ocho, I don't know.
I think, man, the Ocho. I'd like to think the Ocho is the first step, the coolest
That'd be
step.
sweet.
Yeah, I was gonna say if it ends up on ESPN Ocho, that's a highlight for me.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, certainly appreciate you and appreciate everything that PitFit's done for us in recent months, and obviously on the personal side, I mean, I could go into detail for an hour on my own story on that side, but I mean, I guess I will close off this question because you didn't touch on it. Who do you have winning the F1 championship, and what are your takes on testing through day one?
Yeah, well, I mean, not seen all of testing, of course, they're only one day in. My initial pick going into the season was Lewis. But we'll have to see. The McLarens are already looking pretty strong.
That car was on rails. I mean,
mm-hmm.
From your past aerodynamic experience, anything that stood out to you or has stood out to you on these cars?
Nothing that stands out too crazy. I'm a little surprised that there are still some teams going with like a push rod front suspension just because of the aero gains you get from pull rod. But yeah, I mean, I think for as far as the mechanics of an F1 car, those are pretty trivial, and you're trying to maximize aero as much as possible. But I've been out of the aero game for so long now. I don't know if my takes on that are going to be really all that valid.
Yeah, well, this reminds me. I do have one more that I just thought of because you're the perfect person to ask about this. What are your thoughts on the front noses that we're seeing now in karting? Do you think it's a necessary development, or do you think that the teams are getting the manufacturers are getting a little bit excessive with the bodywork component?
If the data says it's worth it, then it's worth it. I mean, that's all there is to it. I haven't seen the data. As far as I know, they are going, like, they're putting them into wind tunnels. Yeah. Like, they're running the CFD, they're putting them into wind tunnels. And if the data says that it'll be faster, then it'll be faster. The shape of a driver in a go-kart is extremely not aerodynamic. So any little thing that these manufacturers can do to manipulate the airflow around the driver, which is a huge protuberance. If the data says it works, then it must work, right? And one thing I'd be curious to see, though, is I feel like it'd be insanely difficult to put an 8, 9, or 10 kart draft into a wind tunnel and see what is happening there. They could potentially model it, which I'm sure they have. But yeah, that's one area where, I mean, just my old curiosities probably would get me a little bit is, I wonder if a certain bodywork may be, better for X30 or shifter, where everybody's kind of running a little bit more on their own, or maybe a different type of body kit would be better on a KA, where you get in these like longer drafts and that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's cool to see, just to see karting kind of get to that level. But I think in terms of what karting really should be and how much it probably all costs, it's probably a bit overkill. It's probably unnecessary. But if there's no rule against it, then they're going to do it, right?
100. I mean, I think that's the whole dichotomy, is if there's gains to be made on the table, there's no such thing as a marginal cost in karting.
Yeah,
that's
but there are marginal gains, and if you have an accumulation of those marginal gains, it can turn into something above marginal. So that's what they're going to do.
Yep. So
If
there
it
we
was
have.
up to me, it'd be breadbox bodywork for everybody. And
I
that's
think
yeah.
bring back the steel bumpers.
Yeah. Steel
Bring
bumpers, breadbox bodywork. Let's go. Let's do
Be
this.
done with it.
Yeah.
Well, Trey, thank you very much for coming on to the show tonight. Again, I've already said it a number of times. Huge thanks to both of our sponsors, DPK Americas, as well as PitFit, for making this all possible. It's been awesome talking about everything from the PitFit side of things to Trey's 24-hour runs to a little bit of shenanigans going on in the PitFit facility, everything, and high-level aerodynamic analysis. So,
I
huge
don't know about
pleasure to
high
have you.
level. It was maybe like low level aerodynamic analysis. Yeah.
Man, compared to what me, Alex, and Caleb would talk about, I think high level is what we're going with. But no, I mean, really appreciate you coming on tonight, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on, and again, just thanks to Car Chaser for everything that you guys have been doing for PitFit. We couldn't be happier.
Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap up our show here. Usually I would do an outro because we'd have me, Alex, and Caleb on the show to talk about. Like I mentioned, we are going to K1 Circuit again this weekend for the Exclusive Pro Kart Challenge. It'll be our first time covering a Pro Kart Challenge race. A lot of entries in store for that one. Obviously, K1 continuing to grow as a circuit. It's been awesome to see that. Next week, of course, going to CKNA for Charlotte. The Winter Nationals, or the Spring Nationals, excuse me, should be a lot of fun in that one. Again, lots of entries. You'll see Alex and Caleb there. You will not see me. You'll see Alex on the show again next week, hopefully, as he recovers from the flu and everything from TSRS. You'll see that he's made the wrong decision on who he thinks will win.
Extremely
F1.
wrong. Yeah. No chance.
Come on, man. Come on, Alex. Like, I told Trey this 2 months ago that I had Leclerc winning the championship. I'm going to stick by that until it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Curious what Caleb thinks. I think Checo's not racing anymore, so I think his default pick's probably out of the question. But we've also got an Ayrton Senna by Noah Perez prediction. I'm surprised no one's gone for Lando. I feel like that's kind of the low-hanging fruit for this year. But no, I mean, we'll have the full cast hopefully back next week. We'll have some guests on for a CKNA preview. Should be a fun one. I know the boys are excited to get back to Charlotte. We're going to have hopefully some new setups, some new graphics in the works. But for now, this has been a very fun episode of KC Grid Talk, even though I had to solo this one with Trey. Awesome guests, awesome fun. And again, hopefully next week got the host back. But for now, this has been episode number 43 of KC Grid Talk, and we will see you next week.